I flipped that airplane over so fast, it never touched the prop. Never touched the spinner. Broke the fuselage behind the rear window, smashed the vertical, bent one wing up so much. And there it laid until the river or the lake froze up.
Welcome to the Coffee in a Hangar podcast. My guest today is Larry Rivers. Let me set the scene on why this is someone that you'll want to learn from. For 40 years, Larry ran a guiding business. During hunting season, he flew his 10 guides with their clients in gear in and out of backcountry mountain camps, landing and taking off from spots barely big enough to operate out of. These strips were purposefully unimproved to prevent competition. Always flying at full gross, the pressure to fly, to push the limits, to push the weather was always a factor, not to mention that in Alaska, the worst visibility and icing conditions happen during hunting season. This is the backdrop for the lessons and techniques that he shares on this podcast. Enjoy. At some point, you got into hunting and guiding, or guiding. How did that happen?
One day I walked the 9 miles into town to buy groceries. It's one of those moments that changes your life in an instant. 20 seconds earlier, 20 seconds later, life would be different.
That's crazy.
So I was walking, I had groceries on my back, a pack full. I'm walking the 9 miles back to the cabin because the train cost $1. We didn't have $1. So we would walk it. And as I'm walking down the one lane dirt road, sort of coming up on the Fairview, Don Sheldon leaned out the door with a microphone in his hand, said, "Hey, Larry, you want to be a hunting guide?" "Sure, I don't have a job." He says, "Get in here, Clark Engel's on the radio. He needs a hunting guide." It was Monday. He needs a hunting guide. So I went in. Clark says, "I need a guide here Thursday. Can you be here?" And I said, "No, I can't. I could be there Friday." And he said, "Okay, do you have a hunting license?" I said, "Yeah, I have a hunting license." "Do you have a guide license?" I said, "No, I do not." He said, "I'll have one waiting here for you. Have Don fly you out on Friday." I neglected to tell Clark I'd never hunted a day in my life.
Wow.
It's called audacity.
Yeah.
So I've got books I was looking through last night that a friend gave me, Warren Kotz gave them to me, on how to judge animals, how to, everything with hunting. And I mean, you know, under the covers at night with my flashlight, learning to be a guide. And then there was a fellow, Tiny was his name. He's a taxidermist in Anchorage. I called Tiny. I said, "Tiny, I need help." He says, "Larry, come on in." So I went to town and I spent a day with him, and he taught me how to cape an animal and flesh it and turn it and do all the stuff I had to have. And that's the reason I couldn't get there till Friday, is I had to have time.
What day was it that he leaned out the window and?
Monday.
God, so crazy.
So I studied Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday I became a hunting guide. The strong, silent,
yeah,
don't
of
talk,
course.
hunting. After 14 days, I had a lot of old hunting stories that I could tell. Yeah. So that changed my life. Like I say, if I'd been 15 seconds earlier, or 15 seconds later, I wouldn't be at that point in the phone call.
Oh my gosh, it's so crazy.
And that sets me here.
He
now.
just saw you. He said, "There's a young, fit,
very
Don
extremely leaned
handsome."
out the door and said, "Do you want to be a hunting guide?" Well, heck, I don't have a job. Sure.
So on your first hunt, are they dropping you off with a client?
Yeah.
Boom, it's go time. How did that go?
How'd it go? Great. First client I got a Dall sheep and caribou, and the next one, I hunted 90 days straight, so we got a lot of game over the next 90 days.
So what year did you start guiding for the first guy?
72.
72.
Clark.
3 years later, you bought the 49 Zulu.
Yeah.
Got it. Wow.
Yeah. And then I had to go to start flying serious stuff, which wasn't, boy, I'm going to go do it, and I'm a bush pilot. Man, I would land. I found a strip that was big, and I had sheep hunters coming.
Yeah.
More audacity. I needed clients. And of course, you have all of your old clients that I guided for Dick and Clark and everybody, and say, well, we want to hunt with you. I say, we can't take you.
Yeah.
Well, why not? He says, because you're Clark's client, you're Dick's client, you're Eberhard's client, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
And they said, but we want to hunt with you. I said, you call them. And if they call me and say it's okay, then I'll take you.
Yeah.
So that worked out good, and I stayed on good terms with all of them, because I got calls saying, go ahead.
Yeah.
And I continued to hunt with them and hunt for them.
You had mentioned that Dick was like a big part of your life, huge part.
Sure, a mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In what ways did he mentor you?
Cub flying.
Cub flying?
Yeah. How to tie down a cub in extreme high winds, how to fly it into short strips, how to jack it in the air with the flaps, how to endless, lots of good stuff that I've tried to pass on. I mean, I remember him saying, boy, I was asked, how do you learn to do this? He said, what do I need to buy? He said, Larry, about 20% of it's the airplane. It's about 80% judgment. Judgment.
Not hours, just judgment.
It's judgment. You get that through hours, but it's not the size. We all flew 850 tires for years,
Yeah.
150 horse engines. We put in all these strips everybody's landing on big rubber now.
Yeah.
He says, it's the judgment. Develop the judgment. You can't buy a better golf club and become a better golf player. It takes practice.
Yeah.
And
that's an interesting thing that you say, because I guess I've never put that together before, that judgment is, that experience, it's not gaining the throttle control or, it's about gaining judgment mainly.
It's
that's the big thing.
So as I started earlier, in hunting camp, I had clients to go out. Well, I'm out a few days before season. I'm finding sheep. Where can I land? And you're looking down the ground, and my gosh, look at all of the alluvial fans and gravel, and I think I can land there, but I don't have the judgment yet.
Yeah.
So I would fly down, put it back on the strip, walk the 10 or 12 miles in, walk that strip, clean it, mark it, then go back out, and then go in and put the cub in there.
So you learned your judgment by walking.
Well, I learned the judgment initially by walking.
Yeah.
I would walked in, I checked the strip, I learned it, I marked it. Then when I'd go land on it, then I would walk it again and see, okay, this is where I touched down, this is where I stopped, this is how much room I had, now come back in the air and look at it. Because everybody can look at a strip. Well, I look at it, but they don't see it. You got to learn to see it.
What is the difference between looking at it and seeing it?
Whoa, look, that looks straight and good. Seeing it is seeing every rock, every cut bank, every bend, where you're going to touch down. When you touch and see it from the air, acknowledge it, remember it when you're landing. That's the initial parts of what we did, what we called bush flying. I mean, bush flying is probably, the definition probably varies with everybody that does it.
Yeah.
My kind of bush flying wasn't air taxi. That doesn't mean that's not bush flying, where they're going from strip to strip in bad weather out western Alaska. It's not Connect River, but that's bush flying to the young guys doing it now.
And there's no reason to discredit that.
The definition depends on the person and what they're doing. None of it's less, it's all challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, my definition of bush flying was leave and go out there for 3 months. And you are on your own, you're fixing the airplane, there are no paved strips, nobody's ever landed there before. You're gonna look at it, you're gonna see it, everywhere you're going, you're bit gross, never over.
Of course not.
Gross load going into all these places, and they get worse and worse until you're landing on big angled airfields going up and cross hills, and you do it day after day, year after year, and you've got to get the cub from day one and back home. And you're on your own. No 2 cubs, no 2 pilots. You got a season to do.
Yeah.
And that's a different kind of bush flying than freight hauling.
Right.
It's just different.
Is it a lot of about thinking? Because I feel like if you're landing on a runway, it's like, well, it's a flat runway, But if you're landing somewhere you've never landed before, you would be, you got to think and imagine all the various things that could go wrong. So it's more.
It gets that complicated.
What do you mean?
How to put it in words. Where you're doing it, like in the Arctic, is a whole different thing than flying the Aleutians.
Yeah.
Okay. When you're flying the wind, you're paying a whole lot different. You don't need much runway.
Yeah.
For one thing. Mm-hmm. But the way the wind's coming from is critical. Mm-hmm. Because you can land in 40-knot winds on beaches, it's straight crosswind. If the beach is steep and the wind's on your wing, pushing you into the sand.
Right, yep.
But you can't lift that wing or it gets under it as it hits the sand and comes up and over you go.
But the angle of the beach is actually doing you a favor in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you got to be careful. I almost killed myself and a client one time when it's black sand and a rivulet had cut a hole that deep and that wide.
What's a rivulet?
Water.
Oh, like a little creek coming down?
A little creek. Yep. And all of a sudden I'm about to go that and my tires would go right into it. So I lifted up and the wind got under it, tipped me up, put my right wing in the sand and pivoted me into a hillside that was about as far away as that wall, which would be about 40 feet. And I thought, so this is how it ends. Mm-hmm. And I gave up. So I tell everybody, this is when I learned God swears. Because I heard this voice say, Larry, fly the damn airplane. And that got my attention, coming right up here in the window. So I was going over, and I said, man, I got to get rid of the lift. So I dumped the flaps because they were now pulling me inverted with all the lift.
Yeah.
And I yanked it in the air, and as I hit that wind packed against that mountainside, I went straight up.
You're in the lift band. You were in the lift band of the mountain. That's what I call it. Yeah.
It was going me up, taking me right up. And so I took that straight up, and when I stalled it, I hit full rudder, and I came down with my tires ticking that hill, coming back down where they had ticked it on the way up. There were no two tracks afterwards. It was a clean wing over. And I flew away and found another place to land. But
that story is so unbelievable to me.
Well, there was a fish and game agent came in one of Clark Engel's camps one time, and he flew right down the airstrip, pulled up on a wing over, hit full flaps, came and set it down. And I was so impressed that I took my Cub out and practiced doing wing overs. It saved my life right then.
So this was something that you had practiced
a lot.
Yeah. Can you explain to me how you do that? So what is the plane doing? It's coming up like this and just, what is a wing
let's say
over?
you're stalling at 30,
Yeah.
which my Cub does about 32 straight forwards. But if you're going vertical to take it to the extreme, it stops all forward speed before it starts falling back. Well, in wing over, when you bring it up steep enough and suddenly you stop flying, you still have rudder control and you hit a big blast of power as you do it, you can kick that rudder right around.
The plane just swaps ends.
Swaps ends, comes straight back down.
So that's what you did.
You have to do it before you stop because you have to have rudder control. And otherwise you start hammerhead, fall back, and you controls, you better be hanging on to them because you're going to bend stuff. So you got to learn before that when to kick it over.
Let's talk about some other lessons you learned from him, judgment-wise.
Well,
Talking about judgment.
Judgment's a big thing. There's no way to judge that except doing. I mean, how long is the strip? Well, how strong is the wind? Makes a big difference. What's your load? Again, we're not going out on the Knik with 5 gallons of gas and a 30-knot wind. Every load is
At gross.
at gross.
Yeah.
You're not going into unknown places empty. If that's where the game is, you're going to land. Find the place at gross. Determine it from the air and get in. And you can't go round and round and round because the game won't be there.
Right.
You're limited. So you have to develop techniques. And then technique, I would say that most people don't do.
Yeah.
You rarely see are what we call approach points.
What's approach point?
Exactly. You're coming in to, say, a gravel bar. Have you've done that kind of stuff, pioneering bars?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
so
pioneering
you
bars
find
is
it,
like
you
you've said,
find
it's-
it, okay, this looks good. Now
Yeah.
you come around, turn around, and you say, where is it?
Yeah.
Well, once you decide you can land there, you come the other way down it.
Mm-hmm.
And you got, this is the threshold. And then there's this bush and this log and that whatever.
You're mapping your approach path backwards.
Sure, so when you come back in, you're not looking for the airstrip, you're following this log, that thing, this puddle of water. Now look up and the airstrip's there.
Yeah.
You're not staring at the airstrip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can't find it.
It might be around a tree or something you have to go
well,
around. Yeah.
But that's usually in gravel bars. Really braided stuff where you've got to find it.
On mountains, I feel like, when you're landing, it's maybe hard to see where you were going to land. And then but if you're coming up, you're like, well, there's that rock, there's that bush, and I know it's shortly
and you're
after
doing this, and you can't see the strip anyway, and you better be lined up.
Right.
I
You call that your approach point.
Approaching points, and you find that before you land, after you decide it works, fly it the other way, and then start logging those in. You might take 2-3 trips the other way to get approach points.
Yep. And in your mind as a guide pilot that's done this and that has a few hours doing it, you're sort of efficient at that because if I can do this in 4 passes versus 15, there's more of a chance
If you got to do 5 passes,
yeah,
go somewhere else.
Yeah.
If you're insecure after 5 passes, I mean,
I think so. I don't know.
3. I'll give you 3.
Yeah. Personally, at my experience level, I don't. And you can argue with me about this if you want, because I'd love to hear your opinion. But I feel like, for me, I've done 15 passes and landed somewhere, but I feel like I'm inexperienced enough that that's what I needed, even though it was a good spot.
And then you better.
But 2,000 hours from now, I would say, yeah. Or I don't know what the number is, but
But that's
I'm building judgment. I'm still learning.
You got to
that
build judgment. How do you build judgment? You say, can I land on that strip? Okay, where are you going to touch down?
Yeah.
Determine that.
Yeah.
Then you're going to come in, and I tell people, when you come in and you determine this is the touchdown point, you cannot land 4 inches earlier. You can land later, but if it's say 4 inches earlier, that should have been your threshold.
Right.
There's no such thing as landing short.
That's really interesting. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, you can land long, but you cannot land short.
Otherwise, you should have used it.
Otherwise, that was a threshold, and you just wasted it. So move it back. So if it's a cut bank, your threshold is a foot from the cut bank.
Yeah.
But you don't start teaching yourself there because you tear the gear off.
Yeah.
So,
and so what you're talking...
finish up. So you land there, and then you stop. And you don't stop and then taxi around. You stop. Now come back, and from where you stop, walk back to where your tires are. And maybe this was your pick threshold, and it was here. But measure from here to your cub, and then scrape that line in those 2 places. Now go look at it again from the air, and see how that compares to that strip now that you've actually landed on it.
Yeah.
Now you're developing a judgment of what from the air it looks like. It's not, well, this is going to take 7 seconds. Okay, that'll work. 7 seconds changes a lot with headwind. It's not the same.
But you're looking at that. It's just you're taking in all this data, and your supercomputer that is your God-given brain is next time you're looking at a strip, you're going to be like, I have the data from the ground. I have the data from what it looks like from the air, and your brain's applying it to this next strip.
And you learn, I didn't need this much.
Yeah.
And then you learn from the air too. You say, okay, what if I can't get stopped? What's my escape route?
Yeah.
If this doesn't work out, how am I getting out of there instead of driving over that cut bank? You determine that by actually seeing it, not looking at it.
Yeah.
Seeing it from the air.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think most of the young fellows do is they come in, they sit down, and then they get on their brakes, and they've just wasted 100 feet, you land with those brakes locked.
Yeah.
You're not going on your nose with that much airspeed, but as soon as you're down and you start slowing down, now you come off the brakes. You don't land, get on the brakes, the end's getting close, stand on the brakes, and tip it up on its nose.
Yeah, on 35s or 31s, your brakes are not going to lock up.
Mine do.
But I mean, like when you're going that fast and you got that much pressure on them, it's
I
just
can lock them tight.
Can you?
Mm-hmm.
You can make those tires lock up?
Yeah, make them skid.
Really?
I believe bush wheels are worn out in the gravel where you're landing with locked brakes, not on a pavement where you're letting it roll.
That's funny. That's an interesting point.
So everyone's worried about the wear and tear on the pavement, so they land in between the landing lights and stuff, I don't believe that.
You believe it's from landing with your brake, from what you do?
Yeah, from trying to stop fast on a gravel bar because we're cool.
Yeah.
I'm really opposed to that. Landings aren't stool competitions, they're safety.
Yeah.
Land, get out, check it out, do it 100 times, not, boy, let's see how short we can start, how short we can get off, empty. If I can have 400 feet, I want it all.
You want to use it?
Yeah, I'm not
For
gonna, if I
landing.
got a 400-foot strip, I'm not gonna try to get off in 2.
Right.
I can get lots of airspeed.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna start a roll for takeoff ever without 10 degrees of flaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if the strip is 280 feet, you're going to try to stop by the end. If it's 400 feet, you're going to stop by the end.
Of course. Well, yeah. Now, well, I won't. I mean, if I got 800 feet, I'm not going to use 800 feet on landing.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
But I'm not going to every time stand locked on it and have the tail going up and try to hold it down.
Yep. Got it.
What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
And I
because
don't
the shorter, the more risk. So, like, if
Sure.
you're, why take that extra risk when you got it?
There, and my type of bush flying is, now I'm guilty. I think I'll land there I think I can.
Just because you can.
What's the point? If you don't have a reason,
Yeah.
why are we taking the risk? Have I done it? You bet.
Mm-hmm.
Is it wise? It's really foolish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and as in your profession that you were in, you had plenty of risk to take.
Yeah, we had plenty.
Just in the
We're not going to
day-to-day.
do that as a game.
Yeah.
Now we're in the middle. I got one airplane and I got all these clients coming.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys would walk in and then I would say, okay, find me a strip from the ground. I'm going in and out, loaded, gross out. I want 300 feet.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not 300 feet, there's no decision to be made. Well, can you do 220? That's not a choice.
No.
I want
you
300
need
feet.
300. Yeah.
Give me 4.
Yeah.
I think another important thing is on the ground. I mean, I was doing this yesterday. You're going into a strip and you've got your guides on the ground and you're going to try to get into that strip. Now, what are the winds? And we look and say, well, what's our airspeed? What's the GPS? We didn't have GPSs. We had to look on the ground. Originally, the guys carried a piece of survey tape.
Yeah.
We called it airstrip on a roll. They'd hold it out there and we'd see it fluttering. Eventually decided, don't dig that out. When you're walking down, if the wind's coming this way, lay your arm out like it's a piece of survey tape. You can do that walking. I'll see the way the wind's coming from.
Yeah.
One pass, now I know.
Yeah.
It's not now that question's been taken out of the equation, the wind question.
Yeah.
Because wind on the ground is rarely the same as it is in the air anyway.
That is something that I've learned where it's just like, whoa, this feels weird. You're on final, and it's like it feels weird.
You want to know what it is on the ground.
Yeah.
More common than not, it'll be 80, 90% degrees off. So that having people on the ground just know how to swing an arm like it's a piece of survey tape.
Can you talk to me more about what you do on the ground when you're walking around on the ground, the things you're paying attention to that will help you later on in checking out other strips or learning about that strip?
When we land, one, we don't go taxi to the parking spot. Mm-hmm. As soon as we're stopped, we stop. We shut the airplane down, we get out. Mm-hmm. Now we go back to the beginning and we walk it.
Yeah.
And we walk it all the way out and we look at our emergency escape routes, and on the ground, often you find they're different than you thought they were in the air. Mm-hmm. Not always, but sometimes. And you walk them out and you lay stuff around.
Meaning like markers so that
of some kind. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm in the hunting business, and I didn't want people coming in following me.
Yeah.
So sometimes I drug logs out there.
You're like, this is too easy.
This is too easy.
Spot is too easy.
And then let's kick some rocks out. Let's put some brush out. We called that then. If it's nice and straight, you're going to have people in there.
Yeah.
So we'd mess it up. We called that threading a strip. We had to come in around that stuff. That was part of the flying. You know, can I thread that? That's too tight. Move that one, Chris. We'd call down, you know. Mm-hmm. But you walk it and you find your escape routes. And then you start noticing the cut banks. And this stick is up so high it might hit the propeller or one thing or another. You know, so you clean it. Mm-hmm. But you want to know it so the next time you're coming in, you don't have a question from the air.
You know that strip.
You know that strip. Mm-hmm. And it will probably be needed in the future, 2-3 years away. You still want to know it.
Yeah. How does that groundwork help you when you're checking out other strips? Does it help you? The knowledge that you
I think it's
accumulate
pretty
over
much
the years?
individual. But I've seen so many people land and they go taxiing away and taxi into a hole and get a problem.
Yeah.
Stop that airplane.
Yeah.
And then go mark the strip. And everybody's marking and everybody's visiting as they're walking down your, you know, the hunting business
Visiting?
Mostly.
You mean like talking?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not paying attention. They're not zoned in.
They're not. Well, you got a client with you.
Yeah.
And he's chatting. The hunting business is mostly, theatrics. Mm-hmm. That's probably the best word. Clients have a dream.
Yeah.
Nobody needs a dead animal.
So you're walking the strip and your clients yap.
Yeah. So,
and you're listening and looking.
Yeah,
and
we got to know how long.
Yeah.
You're counting steps. You got to know about how long this step is. I would recommend you learn how big of a stretch you have to walk to make it a 3-foot step. Most people don't have one.
I know that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've measured it.
You count off 33 steps and you bend down and you pick up a black rock and put it in your hand. Next 33 steps, you put a little one in. Next 30 steps, a little one in. And then, it's another 50 steps. 50 steps takes a white one. At the end, you look at it and you say, that's 320 yards.
Dude, I'm like literally getting chills right now because this is something that I've struggled with so much. You go, I lost count. What?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I always mark on the ground, okay, this is 100 feet, this is another 100 feet or 50 feet or whatever. But then it's like, well, you're trying to find the marks. Yeah. That's so smart.
Well, that's just years of experience.
It's so funny how some little thing like that, it's like, whatever, but that is huge what you just gave me.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, okay, keep going with the groundwork. Because I love this idea of like, what are you doing? People are always focusing on the air, what you're doing in the air, but you're talking about things you do on the ground.
You got to talk about stuff on the ground. If you blow left, if you blow right, how close to the cut bank. A lot of times we'll go in and put in what we call a track strip.
What does that mean?
Well, we're landing in the, let's be proper here, hummocks.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And so we'll lay it out and we'll cut 12 inches wide, 300 feet. Exactly 6 foot on center. That's what a standard cub gear is. Center of a tire is 6 feet exactly.
Those you're talking about the clumps in the tundra that are sticking up.
Yeah,
the hummocks.
We used to call them.
Okay, yeah, I know what you used to call them.
Some people
Let's not
call
say
them
that.
lion's heads.
Yeah. But you're saying you don't go 6 feet wide smooth track.
No.
You only need one here and one here.
12 inches wide.
Yeah. Right.
6 foot on center, and
Yeah.
you land in that. It doesn't give you 6 inches to run off.
Right.
You're going to land on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a track strip.
Got
We
it.
have a lot of them. If you run off, you're going to tear off a gear.
Yeah.
We'll walk in with a mattocks and dig those out.
So you really, I mean, the amount of them that you have to knock down is minimal compared to, I'm going to make a strip.
Sometimes they're really deep, and you have to cut them a little further in so you don't take out the short leg
Yeah. Yeah.
in the middle, going up to the hydrosorb.
Mm-hmm.
You can hook that.
Yeah.
And that's another thing to think about. Commonly, people have a short leg, and they use the old standard one.
What is a short leg?
It goes from the hydrosorb down to the axle.
Okay. Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So everyone's getting fancy new shock absorbs and stuff, but landing gear and the hydrosorbs and the short legs and Cobain V's were designed for 600 by 4 tires, 850s. Once we started putting on bigger tires and skis and wheel skis especially, that's a lot of mass out there. And in the hunting business, normally you use a heavy duty and a medium duty combination shock cord. Well, we only use 2 heavy duties because we were always exactly at gross. And we didn't want that thing splaying out. It's on mine now. But when that gear comes out and slams back in, now it's got a lot of mass behind it. It wasn't designed for, and things bend.
What do you mean mass behind it?
Weight.
Yeah. How
The
does
weight of an 850 or 600 tire versus a 35 is.
So it's slamming back is
They
actually.
come back, wham, against the lightweight leg, and it bends the nipples on shock hydrosorbs, and it bends the end of the short leg, kinks it sideways, and then they're all covered up with a shock absorber cover, and you can't see them.
Yeah.
So it's something that has to be watched for. So I run heavy duty short legs that are much heavier thickness and heavier diameter up into that.
Because that's what.
Yeah,
that's what's
because
gonna
I've been a lot of them. The first one I ever saw was, we talked about Clark coming in and flying straight into the mountain and then flaring and hitting it, bouncing up. And he got back to camp and I looked at that thing and, well, it's kicked like this. Clark, what's wrong with this? He said, oh, don't tell anybody. I've never seen that before, but he had a new one. I think he did. He may have called Stan Frost for one, but we put it on. So we just had to learn to do that and to watch that sort of stuff. But it's real bad on skis. We've been them bad on.
Those days of Atlee Dodge improving things like that, making heavier duty gear and all those things, because I'm saying Atlee Dodge specifically, but there's a lot of guys.
Was the man.
A lot of guys.
And Ellis.
Yeah. So those days of them improving everything, saying, hey, we've got experience. We know this breaks. We're going to make it stronger, better. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
They experiment a lot. It wasn't always right.
Yeah.
I dropped through and ripped off the nipple off of a hydrosorb one time. I dropped onto Atlee's cables and yanked right through the plates that the cables worked to. I never even felt the cable hit them.
You got to be kidding me.
No. And wing went up, and the ski took out both struts. And I'm resting on one thing, wolf hunting in the mountains in the Brooks Range.
Jeez.
In a cold winter, high up on the swale.
High up on the what?
Swale in the mountainside.
Okay.
You know, where we landed to shoot a wolf. And another story with that. But
what did you do? What did you do?
Walked down the mountain and cut 2 spruce trees and came up and lifted the wing up and pushed the struts straight and wrapped rope around the spruce trees, and the hydrosorb and short leg were torn off. So pulled the gear, pushed the wing up, pulled the gear in all the way we could, and tied it with polypropylene rope. When we set back onto it, it still splayed way out, but enough to take off. Took us 3 days. We were hungry. Those were the days you had to keep one wolf leg attached to the hide. I got hungry enough. I was looking at the wolf leg, but we didn't eat it.
Really? That's funny.
we got back to the lodge in Bettles.
Wow. Any other details of that story you want to share?
There was a time when all of the same-day airborne and wolf hunting was under question.
Okay.
And they said we couldn't shoot from airplanes anymore. We had to land. So if originally we would land and the client would have one leg out of the airplane because we had to land. So when we touched down the snow, he would roll out. We'd try to land with the wolf between the skis, but the wolf's really cutting the track. So he would roll out and then come up shooting while you pull the airplane off to stop. Then it became the all forward motion. The airplane had to stop, which was a lot safer.
For the client.
Yeah. All of us. Because once you look for an airstrip a long time until you see a wolf. When you see a wolf, you're going to land.
You just land.
So then it became federal land and you couldn't shoot wolves on federal land. So I came around the corner and here was 2 black wolves running through the swale, and I'd landed on that and shot a wolf before, so I knew it. And I just turned the corner and I came up on that swale, and as I came over the top, I hit a snowdrift and broke that gear off in the right wing.
And this was the same story or different story?
This is the same story.
Okay.
Okay. So when people had said it's on federal land and state land, state you can't, federal you can't. How do you know? And the story went around, well, if they're federal wolves, if they're state wolves, they're running like hell. If they're federal wolves, they're giving you the finger. So we flared, that gear came off, the wing hit the ground, and I crawled out of the airplane with my rifle. And I looked up and the wolves were 30 feet from me sitting down. And I looked at the client, I said, those are federal wolves. Boom, boom.
I thought you were going to say they were sitting there like this.
No, well, same thing.
Yeah,
they were
just
essentially.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, we flew it back home and put new gear on. We broke several short legs through the years.
Yeah. Do you want to tell me any of the other stories or any of those good?
So many I have to.
Well, of the breaking skis, breaking legs.
Skis?
Breaking legs.
Well, up in the Arctic was always a question. We flew skates. Do you know what they are?
No.
Okay, so skis, you've seen hump on wheel skis and straight skis and arrows. You got the hump that the hooked into. Well, we ran skis that were just that hump. They were only this wide.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and we called them skates because in Western Alaska we could land in the heavy snowdrifts that were wind packed and hard as rock. And
They'll
we
cut through it a little
slice
better.
through them.
Got it.
But they were terrible up in the Arctic.
Because
Or we
there's
hit
more powder
rough.
there, or is it?
Yeah, a lot more. And powder blows through into the low spots. It's really deep. One time we came through on a couple wolves
Yeah.
and we smoothed through, landed on that deep fluff, jumped out, and we were buried, airplane buried. We didn't get a shot at the wolf. We went almost to the wings. Had to open the side window and start digging snow into the cockpit and crawled out.
Jeez.
Went to the other side and shoveled out the wing and got to the snowshoes. We used those for shovels. And we shoveled out a big hole. And then we had to go down to some river ice and hard packed snow. We brought up and built a ramp. And then we snowshoed out the strip. We're forever snowshoeing out strips. And the next day it would be frosty, so we had to spend the night. Have to wait for it to set up. So we took off the next day. And we came back and there was another airplane, this day or two later, another airplane landed there with wolves going down the same strip. The guy jumped out and he ran to the end of the strip, and I said to my client, well, watch him when he hits the end. He ran to the end of the strip thinking he'd get a shot, and he stepped off and he just disappeared.
You guys are watching this from the air?
Yeah.
He's using the runway you guys spent.
Yeah, it was like cement.
How many hours did you work on that runway and digging your plane
all day, maybe. It may have been 2 days packing that thing.
So what's the most difficult kind of hunting for a pilot?
Well, sheep hunting's most exacting, I think. If we did the old contour flying that we used to do to find the old rams.
The contour flying?
Sheep tend to live at a certain barometric pressure. How's that?
Got it.
As the pressure goes up, they move up the mountain. As it goes down, they move down the mountain. So we would take that pressure range, and that's the altitude we would fly.
To look for them.
To look for them.
And you can't do that anymore.
Can't do that.
Yeah. So you would do that.
Yeah, we did that.
And so what's exacting or what's taxing about that?
You're in close. You're flying feet off the mountain. And you're looking at rams, and when you see a good ram, you want a really good ram, as you saw in those pictures. And that means you're going to go through on the glide, coming through, turn around with somebody that can observe for you and check them out. And you can only make 1 or 2 passes, and the sheep are leaving. You can get by with 1 or 2.
And you're at idle when you come by them.
Yeah. That's the problem with the Sutton exhaust is when you cut the power back, it backfires. The sheep didn't like that.
So what exhaust did you go with then?
I have a Sutton.
Do you? But you didn't like it because of that?
No,
That's funny.
but having it not behind the engine is really great, having it in front for maintaining the engine and stuff. So you had to go up high and cut the power back. And in them, you're really in close. I mean, you're a little more than, in some of those valleys and draws, you've got 20, 30 feet off each wingtip maybe. And you've got to be able to get in there and get out without hitting full power and running the game out. So it's pretty
You got to plan your route.
precision. Yeah. Now I say I gained from doing that from flying in a J3. Didn't have an engine. You had to know your way out. You weren't going to use the throttle.
When you say you didn't have an engine, you mean you don't have the power to
Don't have
pull
the
you out
horsepower.
of. Yeah.
As a Cub, you see the mountain, you just hit the power and go over it. You don't do that in a J3 or a Cessna 150 or a Champ or a Taylor Craft.
And so you learned that sort of planning, terrain planning.
Yeah, had to plan it.
Yeah.
When you went out in the hole, you better know how you're coming out. When I taught my wife to fly the Cub, she loved that power. Hit full power, raise the tail, pull the flaps,
Right.
But one day then she's going to get in a tea crate and can't do that. So I just drilled a hole in front of the throttle and put a pin in it.
This is what I dealt with.
This is all you get. But it had a ring on it. We could yank it out.
If you need it. That's funny. That's very interesting. When you're dealing with wind in the mountains, do you pick a day in the evening or something when it's calm to do that kind of flying? Or
No, heavens no.
Okay. Talk to me about that.
I'm an illusion pilot. Now, if you're going to wait for a calm day, you're not going to ever fly.
So you're flying in the wind in the mountains, 30
Sure.
feet off your wing.
Yeah,
Wow.
of course.
See, that's more impressive than anything you've said to me.
Why?
Well, I've just flown around in the mountains.
It's
I know
water.
how-
Consider it. It flows.
Yeah.
It bounces over the rocks, around the rocks. And if you got to go up, who's going to pay for? Why pay for expensive gas when you can saddle up to the mountain and have the air take you up?
Yeah.
We lived with it. We had to freight hundreds of miles the fuel into camp.
Yeah.
You don't bend it, waste it climbing.
Yeah.
Use the air.
Yep. What about the landing and the mountains and high as you can, getting as close to the sheep as you can? I see some pictures of guys and they're on the side of a mountain, their plane's sitting like this and their sheep behind it.
That's pretty hard to compensate for.
Yeah.
Most of that I would say, you can do it. I mean, you can't land this.
Oh yeah, that's
Really hard on the gear.
Yeah.
When you're landing sideways on beaches and stuff in a nose wheel, it's going to dive toward the water. The airplane is. If it's in a tail wheel, it's going to go up.
Right.
And you can test that with the grocery cart. Just from the grocery store, go out where the parking lot's sloped
Yeah.
and push it forward and let go and watch that nose drop like a Cessna.
Yep.
Now turn around and try it. And the back end's going to drop. But people think it's always in the Cub tail wheel. They think it's going to dive to the water, and it's not. It's going the other way. So they land and anticipate it, hit the brake, and ground loop it. It's going the opposite direction. It's not sheep hunting we talked about, but on the sand you also have to be careful of ever tapping the brakes at all, because they'll dig in the sand. Not all the sand. Not if it's black packed, but if it's dry, you can drop it right to its axle and put yourself on the nose.
You usually have some beach, so why try to slow it down really quick, right?
Yeah, usually. But you're trying to keep it straight, and so you're differential braking, and you dig it. It's shocking. Or I'm going to touch it and go up to park above the tide, and boom, you drop that gear in. You know, now the tide's coming in, and you're all alone in a heavy cub, and what do? Well, you got a differential brake, lock one, grab that big heavy tail, and swing it so that the bottom gear walks up, and then lock that one, and you alternate it up the beach.
Well, you're pushing it from outside.
Yeah, on the tail. It's a big lever.
Do you have any kind of story about, have you ever flipped a cub over?
No, never wrecked a cub.
You've never wrecked. Have you ever wrecked an airplane?
I had blew cylinders off of 206 and wrecked it. We blew the engine off.
Yeah.
Oil pressure went to 0. Okay, and I thought, man, over the burn north of Fort Yukon, I'm going to have to land, and all that burn stuff, I better put it down. So first mistake was I probably could have made it Fort Yukon. If you can cycle the prop, you've got oil pressure. I never cycled the prop. I just put it down. And I put it down sort of out in the swamp. Now I would put it down close to the trees as I can where it's drier. But consequently, I was further out. I rolled it until the nose wheel hit a creek, a rivulet, ripped it off. I flipped that airplane over so fast, it never touched the prop. Never touched the spinner. Broke the fuselage behind the rear window, smashed the vertical, bent one wing up so much. And there it laid until the river or the lake froze up. We went back, a bunch of us, and took that wing off. It wasn't the whole thing. You're going to dig a hole and swing it under. That doesn't really work if you're laying on the dirt and it's frozen solid.
Yeah.
So we took off one wing and rotated it over that way.
Got it.
Then we had to cut the spar, bend it straight, put angle aluminum in it, put bolts through it, bent the wing straight. We found some old bent wing up in the river bottom, made a new leading edge, pop riveted on, cut the fuselage off, lined it up by eye, used angle irons through the bulkheads, angle aluminum, bolted it back in, put a new vertical on it, and nose gear was torn off. It was back in a long time ago.
Keep going.
So we had to fly it out. We made a tail dragger out of it. We filled the tail full of rocks and took off on the main gear, nose in the air, flew it home.
Wow.
Stuck it in here and rebuilt it.
Other than that, what's the craziest fly out after bending something? You told me about
I don't bend much.
You told me about this, when you're on skis and you tied it up with rope.
Yeah.
Any others for that?
I mean, when you bend them, you fly them out, but I didn't bend them.
Yeah.
I mean, I did props, I bent them,
Yeah.
and then I cut the tips off. And if you've seen the prop that I have out here, you see it's painted in little white stripes, not a big white one and a little one. You know what I'm talking about? Yours are probably, the tip is white and then there's a little white band behind it. How are you going to cut that off and balance it? Mine's done in 1/2-inch stripes, so I can cut a prop off to match.
Very interesting.
And I can fly it home.
Yeah.
The tips of which are up in my bookcase for
Yeah.
cut off with a Leatherman file.
Talk to me about that. You
Have
cut it
a
off
lot
with
of
a
time
Leatherman?
on your hand if you're going to cut it off with a Leatherman file.
Yeah, that would take a while.
But we had to fly it out. We're in a very remote part of the Brooks Range and had to come home.
So you're landing, and it comes up and hits the prop on something, or what did you hit it on?
This was taken off a real nasty spot in the tundra, and we headed down with the wind, and it switched straight on the tail just as I lifted off, and the airplane fell out of the air. And we rolled through a lot of big tundra, gear splaying all the way out, and one of it, blade hit the hummock. and bent it. So we just went down and cut it off on a line and made it balance. Ruined the prop, made it too short,
Right.
but we flew it home.
But enough to fly it home.
You know,
And at the time you had the lines painted in there?
I didn't then. That's when I learned.
Yeah, that's when you learned that. So how did you determine the length? Did you like get a stick and put it on one
pretty
side?
much. Well, we measured from the tip back with a string,
Yeah.
shoelace actually,
So you had to cut both sides off.
to match.
You're sitting there. How long did that take you, do you think?
A long time.
I mean, did you get out of there that day?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that did.
All right.
Prop seals, that's another thing. Blow those out.
What do you mean?
So in the winter,
Yeah.
the bottom of your crankcase vent sticks out, and it's cold, and the moisture's coming out, and it plugs that up. And now you don't have no vent on your case.
Right.
And when you have no vent, pressure has to go somewhere, so it blows the prop seal out, and all the oil comes right out the front, and then all of the oil goes right on your windshield.
Yeah.
And you're not going home. I carry a prop seal with me.
Do you?
It's in the cub all the time.
And you put a few of those in the field?
It's like at 50 below on Killick Lake
Wow.
in the North Slope.
Can you talk me through that? How do you do that?
How do you do that?
Yeah, how do you do
Well,
that?
first off, it's blowing hard,
Yeah.
and it's 50 below zero. And there's one client, he says, you know, can you start up that engine so I can stand in the prop blast and warm up? So cold,
Yeah.
but you had to put it in. We blew it out of the PA-11.
Yeah.
So what you got to do is you still got to take the prop off. And you got to take the, you know, the cone and the flange and the prop and the cowling off. And then you got to get that prop sealed, tap it back in place, and then go drill a hole in the crankcase vent. I have them in all my airplanes, not down low, right up in the top where it's warm. And you got a place for that crankcase to vent when it freezes down below.
Did you like put a tarp over it or something while you're
We
working?
didn't have tarp. No
So you're
tent.
just-
We're wolf hunting.
So you're
North
just
Slope.
what? Actually, that's a question I had. What equipment did you have with you?
A lot. I carry a full set of tools.
Okay.
I carry a full set of 3/8-inch drive wrench sockets. I carry plug wrenches. I carry a full set of box end, open end wrenches. Well, I'm pretty much equipped for anything I have to fix out there.
Okay.
And I carry it with me. I'm not trying to go ultra light.
Yeah.
I'm trying to come home.
Yeah. What about camping gear, clothes, things like that?
I really don't like to do my survival stuff in misery.
Yeah.
I like to survive in some comfort. So I take a really nice tent. I take a 60 below sleeping bag. My thermarest is 30 inches wide so my shoulders don't hang over it. I take the food. And I'm not going to fly out into the winter stuff unprepared. I've gone out there and spent too much time.
What's the longest you spent out there unintentionally?
One year, it had to be in the 90s, our GPS system always had an error put in it for military reasons. And so
A what put in it?
an error, so it didn't read exactly where it was, because military didn't want some other world power using our GPSs for military purposes. So Russia put up all their GPS systems and they didn't have an error. And we all started moving over to the Russian satellites. Well, the US decided maybe that wasn't such a good idea. So they said, okay, on this date in August, we're taking the error out, so the whole system's gonna go down. It went down for 2 or 3 days. And I was up on the North Slope, and by then I'd gotten spoiled like all of us do with GPSs. And I could look one river to the other, and I could look at my GPS, and I could see the terrain, how to weave around, and suddenly that was gone. So we landed on a gravel bar and spent the night. And the next day the clouds lift a little bit, and I could get a few more miles toward home down the streams. And then we had to put down, and it took me days to get back to the lodge.
Wow.
Fortunately, I had agreement with my wife. And I said, you know, I'm out there. We have no phones, no satellite phones or anything. And If you won't worry about me, I'll land on a gravel bar. If you worry about me, I'm going to try to come home.
Which is going to be more dangerous.
Which is going to be more dangerous. So we have agreement. And that's always been our policy.
That's a great policy.
You know? So it probably took me 4 days to get back.
Huh.
Fortunately, all the clients were out hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And the weather was so bad I couldn't have picked them up anyway.
Yeah. That's a great policy. I love that. It's just like, yeah, don't worry about me, because that's when you get in trouble.
Yeah, if you worry about me, you've got something to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
If I know you're not going to worry and be stressed out, I'm going to land.
That's for all the married guys out there.
Yeah, that's
a
right.
tip for all the married guys.
Yeah.
Tell your wife that. I think that's just so key. All right. So if you were me, what would the next thing that you'd want to talk about would be?
I would say if I were you, don't go buy all those expensive Super Cub toys.
Okay.
Spend the money on avgas.
Mm. Yeah.
And don't fly from here to McGrath at 6,000 feet, 2,400 RPM.
Mm-hmm.
You fly for 10 minutes straight at 35 mile an hour airspeed. You climb at different airspeed. You make sure you work on precision all the time. Develop some skills.
So practice on your way over is what you're saying.
Don't just burn gas. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Get yourself on a heading and make sure you don't vary 2 degrees from that heading for 15 minutes.
Mm.
Work on it.
Yeah.
Don't wallow around in the sky. Hold that altitude. Teach yourself. I'm going to turn 45 degrees, and at 4,000 feet, I'm going to level at 270 degrees at 65 miles an hour at this altitude, all at the same moment. Mm-hmm. Not one, then the other, and then the other. Mm-hmm. Develop the precision, because when you one day lose an engine, you're going to have precision to put on that gravel bar. Mm-hmm. Don't put your flaps on too early.
Yeah.
When you take them off, you can't gain speed.
Mm-hmm.
You can always put them in and lose speed late. Mm-hmm. So if you're coming in and you don't have the flaps in, and you're coming into that strip and you're find a little low and you're coming in slow, when you pop that flap in, you're going to pump up a little bit. Mm-hmm. You might make that airstrip.
Got it.
But if you put the flaps on halfway in approach, you can't recover it.
And all that's from
slips can do that.
Yeah.
Parasitic drag. Wet the side of the airplane with the wind to get drag. That's your brake.
Yeah.
Not flaps.
Yeah. Got it.
When you lose an engine out, you don't fly a pattern. You pick that stop where you're going to land, and we do what we call an arc to landing. We head straight there.
Assuming we don't have a ton of altitude to burn off or something.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah.
Why would you run that whole thing? Mm-hmm. If your engine is out, you got to get to the strip.
Yeah.
The other thing Cub pilots do is, I don't know how to maybe quite put it. The shorter the strip gets, the shorter they run the pattern. Oh, it's a little strip, and they're close. Shorter the strip is, the bigger the pattern. You need more time to set up. Mm. You can run a short pattern at Illinois or at International. You got a lot of room. Mm-hmm. But if it's a little short gravel bar, extend that downwind. When you turn on final, you turn exactly on center line on that strip. Not some sort of a turn, then wallow in back. Because now you just wasted your approach. You should have been getting your airspeed under control. Mm-hmm. When you turn on to final, that airplane can change angle to come out. It doesn't have to be set on something. And then let's see if we come close.
And the bigger your pattern, the more time you have
more time.
to deal.
When you turn onto final, that's time now start slowing it down and getting trimmed and getting everything right. That's everything. Mm-hmm. not getting on center line.
What do you mean not getting on center line?
Well, if this is what we're trying to turn onto, and we come out here and we want to turn on center, but you turn clear out here, now instead of approach, you're doing this, trying to get land on center line. That's a waste of, when you turn, you want to be on it, now start slowing that baby down.
So it's the second you turn, you're on center line, so you don't have to worry about that anymore.
So if you're going too
you
far,
want to-
tighten it up.
Yeah.
If you're turning too soon, shallow it out. You need to come in directly on center line as soon as that's on final. Working with Cub pilots on their technique, they learn a lot of mistakes. And one time I had FAA ask me, he says, what's the #1 problem Cub drivers have?
Hey guys, we'll get right back to the interview, but first, let's talk about the easiest way that you can support us in making more content like this. So this program is self-funded, meaning if you want to support us, all you have to do is go to my company's website, sportaircraftseats.com. We make aircraft seat upholstery kits that can be installed by an owner or mechanic in just a few minutes with little to no skill. Now, the process that we have created is very easy. You can design and order the seats right on our website. We'll then make them according to your customizations and what seat frames you have, and we'll ship them right to your door. We have instructional videos that show you every step of the installation process and a comfort and fit guarantee. Click the link in the video description or go to sportaircraftseats.com to check us out.
What's the #1 problem Cub drivers have that gives them in trouble? And I have to paraphrase Paul Roderick. He was asked one time, what's the #1 ski pilot problem? #1 problem Cub drivers have is optimism. Oh, I think I can stop there. Oh, I think I can get out. Don't be optimistic. Plan for trouble.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, Cub drivers just like to come in, they want to show off. I can get into that place. You know, and the biggest trouble they have is they like to go to gravel bars. As my son-in-law says, after we were working gravel bars and we went to work the mountains, he says, gravel bars are really the low-hanging fruit, aren't they? He says, you know, I go back and work these mountain strips now and I come home sweaty. On gravel bars, I can go land on 15 straight. Just bang, 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 bang. They don't mean anything.
Mountains have all that three-dimensional aspect in addition to the wind.
And landing on slopes, everything isn't flat. Okay, the engine's out. Where are you going to land? When we fly the strips, we fly up the river, I just shut the power off. They put on the gravel bar. I don't know where I'm going. Then why haven't you been looking? Your eyes need to be massaging that strip, that field, that river all the time. You need to always know where you're going if you have trouble. So what if you're up in Mystic Pass and it quits? I don't know if you've flown it, but it's nasty.
Yeah.
So where are you going to land? Oh, there's nowhere to get. Well, what about all those alders? That's like a big spring mattress.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's narrow. So come into it, get your speed up, and fly up the alders. And as it gets ready to stall out, set it in.
How would you practice for that move?
In the mountains, go out and fly that stuff.
Talk me through that.
When you climb, if you climb vertical, you stop. That would be a perfect time to set them into something with no vertical speed. So plan on, when you come into it, land on the slope, you come in low and hit power and you get parallel to the slope and then flare going up. You don't fly into it, flare and hit.
Yeah.
You always climb into it.
Yeah.
So get enough speed. Don't slow down. Now I'm flying at the hill and I'm barely airspeed. And now I'm going to stall it right into the hill. Dive. Get some speed up, climb, and just set them in.
So maybe you would practice that like in the winter on the side of a hill where you could land and
Yeah,
you could kind of
first off, you got to think about it.
yeah.
You got to get it.
But
in
maybe
your
find
mind.
a spot where it's several thousand feet of ridge or something.
I mean, mostly it's going to be in here
Yeah.
because you can get on mountains. and it's so steep, and you haven't allowed any way off the ridge,
Yeah.
and now you can't outclimb it.
Right, and then you're going to land.
You're going to land. So,
That's
I mean, if you get the time sometime, we'll go up here into the mountains and we can land on some of those.
I'm definitely going to take you up on that. Yeah, 100%. That's what an opportunity.
You know, I want to touch, might help other people too. Everything is, wow, I want 160 horse cup.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
180 horse.
No, 160. I want to take my 150 and make it a 160.
Okay.
I don't.
Why not?
It's 10 horsepower.
Yeah.
How many times you ever need the 10 horsepower?
I don't know.
Wow, save 6 feet on takeoff. Boy, I really needed it. You know, it's ego.
Ego.
Requires 100 octane.
Mm-hmm.
100 octanes, let's just say $3 a gallon more in car gas.
Yeah.
10 gallons an hour is $30 an hour. 2,000 hour engine is an extra $60,000 in fuel per rebuild.
Man.
$60,000 would pay for that rebuild, and every annual.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need the extra 10 horsepower?
Wow.
You fly into a village and you're out of fuel. They got mo gas. They don't have 100.
Mm-hmm.
So get a charter, bring you 10 gallons of 100.
Mm-hmm. How much is that going to cost?
Mm-hmm. It makes no sense.
So when you save that extra 60,000 and you spend all of that on more fuel, you're going to be able to do things the guy with the 160 can't do.
160 can't do.
Yeah.
160 horse, I went through it too, and then I added up the differences on fuel, and I said, no, don't do that.
Man, now I want to rebuild my engine again, make it back to 150.
Yeah, it's ego.
What a great piece of advice. So you had hunting cabins, hunting lodges all
Never
over the
used
place.
cabins, ever.
But you had lodges,
Yeah.
you've told me. How many lodges did you have going at the max?
Count them all over the world.
Yeah, that you were running.
Well, we ran one in the Brooks, one here, one in Cold Bay and Sand Point. And then we had them all over the Russian Far East, Central Asia, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan.
How did you come to working in Russia?
Got invited over by
How'd
the
that-
Soviet government. That's in Russia.
How did that happen?
I got a phone call.
Yep.
And Meade Treadwell and Jerry Jakes and Meade's girlfriend and some others, we got invited over to open up hard currency businesses. I mean, it was plenty of fun because the Russians only used AKs, essentially, with full metal jackets. And so if you shot a bear, they weren't going after that bear. They're going to wait 2 days and let it die.
Yeah.
So they'd drill holes through the bullets to try to make something that would open. They didn't understand at all. We went there with 375 H&Hers, wounded bear in Alders. We wanted to go get it. I did. I loved that, going into Alders after a wounded bear. That was
Why did you love that?
adrenaline. Chris Loomis was one of my guides, and he was real tall, and we both carried 375s, and so we'd go through the Alders, and I'd get down in the bear tunnels where I could see in the tunnel, and he was up high where he could see if the branches were moving, and we went in to get them. It was fun.
Did you ever have one run after you?
That's why we went. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were wounded, and once you got within 15, 20, 30 feet, they were going to stop you.
Tell me about it.
Well, you're not going to get off the adrenaline high for a day.
Yeah.
That's why we did it.
Really?
That's all.
It would take you a day to come down from
Oh,
that?
probably.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And we're sure, even now,
Really?
gets me going. And of course,
Like
we're,
thinking about it gets you going.
oh yeah, I love it.
Really?
Yeah, I live for it.
So they would come running through the bear tunnel at you, and
Yeah,
there you are
of course.
down there?
And so you'd be shooting, probably never further than that red cabinet. At 375, when you hit a 375, hits the bear, it hits the ground. You got time to reload.
Really?
then you need to reload.
Have you ever been underneath one when it finally died?
No,
No. Never had that
that
happen.
probably changed my whole opinion.
Really? So you never had one touch you?
Well, yes, I've had them come off of a hill. We were after a wounded bear. Coming back, there was a big piece of rock sticking out in the ocean. And went around the corner and we saw a bear had gone up the side, but we couldn't find the bear we were after. So we went back around, and as we were walking around it, I heard rocks falling. And I turned and looked, and here the bear was coming down this side, and he had knocked some rocks loose. And then he hit the ground and started running. Well, I didn't have a rifle with me. The client had one. I was carrying the binoculars and everything, looking. And I told him, don't shoot. Wrong bear, too small. And he says, I have to. Boom. And the bear rolled up and hit us in the legs and
really?
knocked her. We fell over the top of it, both of us.
Wow.
No,
But he was dead at that point.
yeah, he was dead.
The thing that fascinates me, do you consider yourself a businessman?
Yeah.
Because you were running 10 lodges, but how many guides did you have working for you?
I couldn't even count. I had 10 here in Alaska.
10 lodges here in
10
Alaska.
guides
10 guides.
that I ran all the time. And we had all of our Russian guides in each camp. And I brought my Russians here in the Soviet time and trained them in our hunting camps here. And so we'd teach them that actually just a female sheep was not this trophy thing, and they didn't understand that at all. So we had to take them out on trophy hunts and judge sheep and learn to measure sheep for trophies. And then we had to train, and then our guide went with them, and they took a client, and our guide went, and the Russian guide guided the whole hunt with American guide that was licensed with them, and teach them the whole thing about guiding. And that's how we had to train our Russian guides.
Because hunting was more of a survival thing. For them.
It's food.
Yeah.
They didn't do it for fun. They did it to feed the cities.
Yeah.
That was part of their whole
And so you sort of introduced this. Is hunting still going on over there?
Of course.
Like this?
Yeah, but I mean, certainly with the current situation, don't get a lot of international hunters going to Russia.
But you kind of opened this up over there.
Yeah. This is in the Aleutians. We buried our tents down in old military revetments
Yeah.
to get out of the wind.
Yeah.
But out there, that's another thing I learned from gun auction was how to tie an airplane down in the wind.
Let's talk about that. How do you tie an airplane down in the wind?
Well, we used to have around the military areas. Now, this isn't true on all the beaches, but around the military, they had cedar telephone poles everywhere because there's no trees.
Yeah.
They used to joke about the nice thing about the Aleutians was there was a woman behind every tree. There weren't any. There were only cedar. We called them Eisenbeck cedars.
Yeah.
They were telephone poles.
Yeah.
By the time we were done down there weren't any because we used them for firewood to heat our cabins.
And they'd been put there by the military or something?
Yeah, World War II,
Got it.
fighting the Japanese. So from the front of the cub, we would cut down cedars, and we would take a cedar this big around and 10 foot long. We'd bury it 4 foot deep. And then we would run ropes that had coming off the crabbers that were on the beaches, and we would do a double wrap to the surface. That then we could put our tie-down ropes up to the wings.
Yep.
Okay, and in the really strong winds, the ground would heave. This thing where people go out and put a little twisting thing in the ground, they'd never hold out there.
Yeah, when you really need it, that's going to come
They
out.
don't do it. People go out and put a 55-gallon drum full of fuel and think it's a tie-down. That's 350 pounds.
Right.
You could put 700 pounds in the cub and fly away. The fact that it's hanging from the wing doesn't change that.
That's what I've always said. If you could fly with it in the airplane, why are you tying down to it?
That's right. That's why we buried them.
Yeah.
But then we ran from the struts forwards about 20 feet, and we had another one. A dead
Another
man.
buried
Yeah.
log.
Now, we called it a bridle. That also meant that we can turn the airplane around and tie the tail
Got
to it, and we had a bridle on the other. The bridle kept it from pulling backwards against the wind. We didn't lash them tight and tie the tail down. Cub can take 150 mile an hour or so on the nose, but not in this attitude.
Right.
It'll tear it apart.
Okay.
So we left 3 foot of slack in the tail. So the tail came up and flew in a flying attitude. Then it can take that wind.
Why do you tie the tail down at all? In case you have a wind from the back?
No, if you don't, it'll go over on its nose into a wind like that.
Oh, really?
It'll pop up, the wind will get on the cowling and shove it right down the ground. When it's blowing that hard, if you don't have the bridle, as the tail comes up and tips forwards, the airplane pushes back on the tie downs, which they're tied up high, which pulls the nose even over further, and eventually it's going to stand on its nose with the tail vertical into 60 mile an hour headwind.
Got it. So the bridle part, you've got it tied 20 feet in front
Tied
of
to
the
the ground
airplane.
with this much slack. Now, under each tire, we dig a
When
hole.
you say this much slack, what do you mean?
I'll tell you in a minute. We dig a hole under each tire. So it taxis through and gets the axle level with the ground. That gets rid of angle of attack. We want to get it into flying attitude. You never, ever tie a cub by pulling the stick backwards and tying it there. That's absolutely asinine.
Right. That makes sense.
Because what it's doing is it's lifting
Yeah, you're in liftoff
elevator.
configuration.
So when the wind on the nose, it's driving the tail on the ground. You can't spill the lift. If it comes from the tail, it's getting under the tail and trying to flip it. You want the stick tied forwards. The elevator's now down. When the wind hits it, the tail comes up and spills the lift. So you leave 2.5, 3 foot of slack. But not enough it can go over the top.
Got it. What happens if the wind's gusting and the tail's coming up and down, banging like that? Just deal with it.
But if it's gusting, it's not 6 months of daylight, 6 months of darkness. It's not 80, nothing. It's on and off. It's not hard.
Got it.
Okay.
And
it
it
blows so hard out there.
Yeah.
The wind on the prop will keep it spinning all night and keep oil pressure up. Thump, 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 thump.
So it's more like 70.
Or 100.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the bridle, it's blowing back into those tie downs. So,
Explain that again to me. Sorry.
well, if you don't have a bridle that's holding the tires here, the wind starts blowing it backwards. That's the ropes going up to the struts start pulling it forwards.
Yeah. So the ropes on the wings are keeping it from lifting off, and the ropes to the bridle are keeping it from going
Blowing
backwards.
back.
Got it.
And a little bit of slack means it comes up and actually flies. It's not touching the ground at all.
What are the bridled ropes attached to on the
The
airplane?
top of the strut.
The top of the strut.
Yeah. And you never trust those tie-down loops. They break.
Oh,
on
the
your
little
cub.
ones that are on the strut? Yeah.
You go through it, around the strut,
Yeah.
between the strut and the cable, and back out the tie-down loop. All they do is direct the tie-down.
What a lot of people have the Atlee Dodge tie
That's
downs.
only
What do you
helps
think
in
of
a
that?
crosswind. That keeps a crosswind, puts that diagonal piece of metal that comes from the strut, or from the wing spar to the strut, breaks
Yeah.
in a crosswind. It doesn't head on. So the tie down around the whole spar doesn't have a diagonal. And
Got
it's helpful in a crosswind.
Got it.
When it's blowing 100, you still don't have enough room for all the ropes you want to put on. They're like this big around. If you can't tie a knot, tie a lot. You put
Child. Oh, I would rather have a good knot than a lot.
when it's blowing that hard, you want a lot too.
A good knot and a lot.
Yeah, you bet. Nothing makes you sleep better.
So you said you love the adrenaline rush of chasing a bear that's wounded. But what?
Let me clarify that.
Yeah.
That's if I have a 375 H&H in my hand.
You know, exactly.
If you have the rifle, you wonder what the bear is going to do. It's a different mental state. If you don't have a rifle, your whole focus is on what you're going to do. And there's a big difference. A big difference.
Okay, follow-up question to that, though. You are an adrenaline junkie in that
Yeah, I am.
regard.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like you are when it comes to flying. Am I judging you correctly when I say that?
Yeah, true.
Can you explain that to me?
I like the thrill. Yeah. That's why I'm a skydiver. That's why I'm a rock climber. That's why I'm a scuba diver. That's why I race skiing. You know, I like the adrenaline. I don't want to die.
Got it.
And so we do all of it with the balance. People say, oh, it's foolish doing that. Well, I tell you what, you're driving down a highway, 70 miles an hour, and the only thing between you and cars coming the other way is yellow paint.
Yeah.
Now, someone that doesn't drive thinks that's asinine. But if you know what you're doing, it's not.
Yeah.
And all of those, quote, dangerous sports is that way.
Okay, so what about flying a Cub and going off and landing and stuff? Yeah.
Well, then it's the
you ever
challenge
get a
of
rush?
doing it.
Did you ever get a rush from that?
Well, I probably still do.
Yeah.
If you're going into a really nasty place up in the hills, and yeah, you got $120,000 at risk or whatever, is there a rush? Sure. I mean, there's no point in
But you're not
denying
going
it.
out and doing things unnecessarily just to get a rush from that.
no,
You're
that's
just
right.
like calculated.
Calculated
Yeah.
in all of it. One guide one time, one of my pilots I guess he was a pilot and a guide, he flew my Cub into a Quonset down in the Aleutians.
Oh my gosh.
I rebuilt that one too.
Did he fly it into it, or did he?
He ran off, this is a piece of history. He ran off the airstrip, and this is for you to remember. On your left rear rudder pedal, the inside, it's a T. Go to the inside and cut off a 1/4 inch. Just take a hacksaw and cut it off. When it goes all the way forwards, the bolt that goes through the ratchet notch on your flaps sticks out, and it's probably rubbing the top of that rudder pedal. If you feel it, you'll feel the indent. It can eventually wear through and drop inside and jam it, because that cable comes back and goes to the tail. And when you stand on the rudder in the front, it pulls that back rudder in. Tries to take out the angle. And when it does, it rubs on that.
Wow.
I found a lot of them. It locked up, and he couldn't have enough rudder. See, on the road we were landing on a military road, and went off through the thunder and ran into that Quonset.
Wow.
That's Don Lee.
Oh, that's Don Lee? You guys have been buddies since
Since he was 14.
Can you tell me a story with you and Don Lee?
He had a stock brokerage fellow, I did, from Spain, and Donnie guided him.
Yeah.
And down on the peninsula, he shot a brown bear. And the streams in the Aleutians and the peninsula can be this wide and 10 feet deep. Literally.
Yeah.
And the darn bear fell in one of those holes and went underwater and died.
Oh my gosh.
And they had to go down and get a beach rope and come up. And Donnie dove in and wrapped it around the bear's head, and they pulled it out. And we got several people in there. We lifted the bear partway out of the water, but we couldn't move. It was a big bear. So Donnie went into the stream and skinned it underwater.
It had to have been super warm water.
Oh yeah, there's cold stuff down there. So that was a fun one. Another time we had a fellow up there that was, wind blew so much, blew the tent apart. The guide panicked. When I got up there and landed to pick him up, the guy jumped in the airplane and he said, "Get me out of here." Left the client, and the client just shook his head and rolled his eyes. So then the wind came up, and he's up there in a tent that's blown flat, sleeping in the water. And so I take Donnie in to guide then. And that was a situation where it was blowing so hard we could hover. So Donnie crawled out of the airplane and hovered in over and dropped in to take care of the camp.
Say what now?
Well, he hung from the short leg while I came down to where he could get on the ground.
Okay. So the airplane would, so you're hovering.
Yeah,
And
in
you're
the wind.
5 feet off the ground.
I mean, the wind's coming up so hard up the bank. I had lots of lift, so I just hovered down. Okay, I'll hang on there. Lower me down to the ground. I mean, he was a great sport like that.
Fun guy.
Yeah, he's great.
Why don't we use that as a transition into with your clients, your hunting clients, because you've had an innumerable amount of hunting
Yeah, I have
clients.
no idea how many. But I have every contract I ever wrote.
You know how to give them the experience they want. And we were talking at lunch that you know, it's not always about killing an animal.
Not in our camp, it wasn't.
Yeah. Can you talk about that?
We didn't sell dead animals. We sold an experience, a dream. The important thing was, if people said, I've saved up my whole life for this, we never had room.
And why is that?
I could never live up to their expectation.
Yeah.
They dreamed too many years. They'd read too many outdoor life stories about game running over everything, and we could have shot 15 good sheep, but I picked we could never live up to it.
Yeah.
We needed somebody that was coming not for the hunting, but for an experience. And we would ask them, at say the hunting shows, oh, I want to book sheep hunting with you. Well, have you been to Alaska? Yeah, I have, 4 years ago. Where'd you hunt? Alaska Range. Who'd you hunt with? So-and-so. Well, why aren't you going back with him? He has a good reputation. Well, it's because this, and this. Now I knew what they were buying. Whether there was too much alcohol and they didn't want to be in a camp with it. If it was, we had to ride horses all day and back and forth. We had to do this or that. Well, I knew what they were hunting, what they were buying, so that's what I sold them. And then the guides knew that. And if he was dreaming about flying into camp and not coming back to main camp, he didn't come back to main camp.
In other words, he wanted to be out there roughing.
He wanted to be out there roughing it. That was it. If somebody, well, you know, I really want to shower once in a while. Okay, then every 3 days I flew him in for a shower and back out in the evening so he didn't lose a day of hunting. But we had to find out what they were buying.
Yeah.
And then we provided it. Nobody needs a 16-foot polycarbonate kayak.
Yeah.
Nobody needs a newspaper. They're buying the newspaper for the news, not the newspaper. Nobody's buying the kayak because they got to have a kayak in the living room. But you can sell them the swans in the mist that the kayak can take you to.
Yeah.
So don't sell a kayak, sell swans.
Yeah.
And that's how we did hunting. We found out what they were buying, and that's what we sold. And when we went in, every guide was notified of what their client's dream was.
Yeah.
And our hunting was mostly theatrics.
Yeah. What does that mean, theatrics?
It was a show.
You're giving them what they wanted.
Yeah.
And
we
so,
told the stories that they wanted. We put them in the kind of camp that they wanted. Man, one fellow came in and says, I'm such good shape. I've been training for months to do this. He said, he turned to Dave Delcourt, I want that bald-headed son of a bitch right there for my guide. And all the other guys said, oh, he wants the Delcourt experience.
Is Delcourt in good shape?
Oh, he was a distance bicyclist.
Okay.
He was in great shape. In 3 days, I got a call on the satellite phone that says, Larry, come get me. I said, why? What's the matter? He said, I've whipped my guide's ass enough.
Yeah.
So, but he wanted the hardest climb, the hardest everything he could do.
He wanted to
That's what he wanted. And that's what he got. He picked it.
Yeah. So when you say that you're figuring out what they want and then selling them that, you're not just talking about that you're talking them into buying it because of that. You're actually giving that experience to them.
I will provide.
Yeah.
If I can't, I won't book it.
And that's why you don't sell a dead animal, because you never can guarantee that.
But we didn't focus on the dead animal because, have you played Monopoly? How many happy players in a Monopoly game?
One.
When you pull out the tape measure and you tape those horns, 10 happy hunters become one happy hunter, and the other are upset because theirs wasn't that big. So why would I pull out a tape measure? Tape measure is for measuring construction, not measuring happiness. Leave it in your pocket. Our guides never carried them. We measured everything afterwards to file the reports when the clients were gone.
Yeah, let them go home just
Let them have a
thinking
great
about the experience.
time. It's not my job to ruin their hunt with a tape measure.
That's so interesting, and it makes so much sense to me. Well, walk me through a day. What's a day like?
I would get up at about 6 in the morning. I usually had to go to bed about 1 or 1:30.
Okay.
I'd get up at 6. My wife would already be up getting breakfast ready. And if everything was going good, I went back to sleep for an hour or two. I really couldn't fly until in the Arctic. It depended on everything. Was a bright sun in the morning. There would be so much mountain shadow, you couldn't fly into it and see anything. It was dangerous. I couldn't have the sun low.
Got it.
So I'd have to let it get up to 10 o'clock or so. And by then, the guys would come saying, how much fuel? And I'd have a pretty good idea, if we were spotting, fill it up. Then they'd come back and I would not even get out of the plane. I would say, I need 7-inch wing or whatever to get out back, land with the legal amount of gas, of course. And off we would go. And when I came, I would take out the guide first, and we would put him in a strip located close to that mountain. That meant if we rarely said, oh, let's just go to the strip. We never did it. When we found the game, we put in the strip. That meant with the guide and half the camp. That was gross. And that's when we would explore and find the camp, put it in. And then while he was setting up camp, I went and got the client and brought him out.
And would you land him on the same place you landed the guide? Or would
Yeah,
you...
absolutely.
Got it.
The
guide's not...
We almost never left a client in the field. If I was to move the camp...
What I meant by that is, are you putting in a new strip near the camp? Or if the guide's finding the camp?
No, if the camp guide wasn't there, if I hadn't found a place to land. Or we won't call it a strip. We found a place to land.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was the only time we ever landed there. Other times it became a staple.
Yeah, right.
So then I went back and we hit the ground, and the guides were I would call in on the radio who was next. And they would be bringing that guide out. I'd say, I want him lined up with, whatever guide, because I matched personalities with clients. They want a big personality conflict.
So you've just dropped the client off with the other guy, and you're coming back, getting another guy.
I had all of them to move.
Yeah.
And so when I hit the ground, I had always said, I want have Dave down there. I need this many gallons of gas. I need all this equipment in the second half of the camp. And every camp were in these Rubbermaid tubs, Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, all labeled.
And so then you're sitting in the plane, they're loading it, getting in.
I'm sitting in the plane, they're gassing it, loading it, putting the client in. When it's lunch, I was handed my dinner, my lunch, my supper. And I flew. I had to have the last client on the ground and guide by midnight. So they could hunt starting 3 a.m. legally.
Right.
So I was always pushing it to the last minute of the day, getting them all on the ground. And
Could
then
you set up 10 clients and guides in one day?
Probably not.
Probably not. What's the reasonable number if the weather's favorable?
Depends on weather.
Yeah.
Maybe none.
Yeah.
If the weather's really bad and you cannot safely fly there, it doesn't mean the client hasn't hit the ground. He wants to go. So Chris and I would head up, okay, we're going spotting. Well, we might just go around the corner of the valley where they couldn't see us and sit down on a gravel bar for a few hours.
Just so they're not picking at
so
you.
they feel we're working.
Otherwise, they're going to be like, hey, can we go now? Can we go now?
Go. And you can't,
Yeah.
It was unrealistic, but we weren't going to risk our lives.
Yeah.
And we went back and they were happy. And if we got out in the field and it was too tough, they couldn't move, we couldn't climb it, we're not seeing anything, then the guys all called for a PM. Hey, boss, we need a PM.
PM?
It's a political move.
What does that mean?
That means the game's there, but he's not happy, let's move.
Oh, okay. A political move. Got it. You're moving the camp for political reasons.
Yes, right.
Got it. Okay. That's funny. Once again, it's about theatrics and
It's
making
about
them happy.
theatrics, and they were moved, and it's fresh, and they're happy. Well, it might have been the best place in the world, and once he was moved, I moved somebody else in there, and they'd get their game. But if the client isn't happy, you don't leave them there.
Yeah.
It's a game, your client's happy.
Yeah.
It's not a game about we have to shoot something. Not that that wasn't important. I mean, it was.
Well, obviously
sold-
from these pictures, it's not like you guys weren't shooting anything.
No,
You
we were good.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, Chris went like well over 30 straight stocks without a failure.
Crazy.
Never missed one. But when I hired a guide, I mean, this is certainly not about flying, but they came in and said, you know, I love to hunt. I'm so excited about hunting. I live for this. I really want to be a guide. I wouldn't hire him.
You wouldn't hire them.
Not a chance. Because he would get excited and blow the hunt. And that meant we lost a day and had to move and search and everything again. I wanted guides that did not live like that, and they were absolutely clinical.
Professionals.
They were professionals, and that all that mattered. And they would be on the hill and say, boss, we got the sheep. I'll be at Wahoo Lake at 5 o'clock tonight for a move. He wants caribou. Then I would go ahead and get the stuff into the caribou camp, pick them up, pick the client up at 5, move him to camp for a shower, pick up the guide, move to the other camp, drop to camp, take the client up.
You were talking about turning down, putting your nose down in a turn.
Yeah, something I work on with all the Cub pilots that come through. And that is if you're turning a really steep turn, if your nose is high in the turn, you risk accelerated stall. One wing over the top.
Right.
If you're going around and your nose is just a couple degrees below the horizon, you can't do that.
How do you know that when you're in the mountains?
You look out the front of the airplane.
Yeah, but how do you know where the horizon is?
Well, you can tell if you're flying at all, you know when the airplane's climbing or diving. And if it's real tight turns, anything, I mean, when you go up at 45 degrees, you're losing half your lift. But you can add lift with 10 degrees flaps. You can just reach down in the tight turn and set it. And if you're about to hit that canyon wall, bring in a whole lot more and suck that baby around. That flap is control.
Yeah, I've done that. And it's, well, I haven't almost hit a canyon wall, but I practicing tight turns, pulling flaps in.
Yeah.
And
And you don't
it
let
works
go
really
of
well.
that button and hook it on a notch.
You don't let go of it. You just leave it in. Or you just
I
hold
keep
it.
my thumb on it. It's a control,
It's not a set it and forget
not a setting. You wouldn't throw this much stick in and leave it.
it. And then pin it in place.
No,
Yeah.
you wouldn't
Right.
do it.
You're
It's a
adjusting it.
difference.
That's really an interesting concept. So nose down.
Below the horizon, not
Yeah.
steep,
Yeah.
just below the horizon so you can pull it around.
That way you're going downhill a little bit. You're losing
A little bit,
altitude.
but not much.
Yeah. But it's the difference between climbing a little bit. It's huge.
Well,
The
you're
difference between those two.
If you got that nose up and you're trying to climb, you block that wing.
Yeah.
Now, most of the time you won't. It's just that one time that you do.
At one time, then it matters. There's always more than one thing to consider.
There's more than one thing to consider.
Yeah, I feel like that's a theme throughout bush flying. It's
Yeah,
not just
it is.
this.
You
thing.
can't say everything can be perfect and runway's going to be this. I mean, even on a main airstrip, if you got a strong crosswind, you got a crown, land on the side of the crown toward the crosswind, so it's pushing you into the crown. Don't land on this side where you got a wing high.
Yeah. Then you're not going to have rudder control on that.
Well, the wind's going to be climbing the crown and hitting that wing that's up.
Yeah.
If you're a Cub driver, okay, and this is the runway, and the wind is blowing this way, you don't have to land down here. Come in from the angle and cut, cheat.
Yeah.
There's no FAR says you have to land parallel to paint. You don't have to land parallel to the center line.
If you're on a big runway, like if you go out to Dillingham and the big runway that jets land on,
Yeah,
it's almost as wide as a.
sure, I land on sideways on them all the time.
And especially if you go at a 45, you've just cut the crosswind component dramatically.
Dramatically.
And you still got 500 feet of strip.
Yeah, and you're good. And then once you go across the crown, you're good to
Yeah.
handle a lot of it.
So you say you don't sell animals, but this is the typical.
Well, that was the excuse.
This is the typical picture from your.
It's excuse for going hunting.
I feel like that's a life lesson, though. Is
the goal of making money or whatever. It's not what you focus on. You focus on the giving of the value, and then the money comes.
I tell people to do that.
What?
I got a friend here. I said, man, I got to work. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I said, when you're on your deathbed, are you going to say, man, I wish I'd signed one more contract? Or are you going to say, I wished I'd traveled? I wished I had gone somewhere with the kids. Oh, I wish I'd signed one more contract before I died. I mean, on your deathbed, you decide maybe that's not so important.
Right.
Live life. Life's a vacation. Don't waste it.
As we've talked before, I just want to thank you for doing this.
It's great
And
fun.
it means a lot to me that you would take the time and that you would share.
You went to all the effort. You brought it up here.
I agree. I should be thanking myself. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Hey, thanks for watching. We'll have bonus content after this break. But first, let's talk about saving weight on your airplane. One of the most overlooked weight savings you can do on your aircraft is seat upholstery. In addition to losing an average of 5 pounds and as much as 45 pounds in extreme cases, redoing your seat upholstery will make you more comfortable while you're flying, add value and curb appeal, and can even have added safety margins. We'll talk about the safety features in another video. But for now, let's focus on weight savings. Some old aircraft were built when the upholstery and foam technology was, well, still using horsehair for cushion material. Not to mention that a lot of seats have several layers of upholstery stacked on top of each other. All this can add up to significant weight savings. This customer saved 8 pounds on just his Cessna 170 pilot and co-pilot seats. This customer saved 11 pounds on his Super Cub seats.
We just put these seats in Jack's Cub. We saved, what do we save?
11 pounds.
11 pounds.
Scotia over 11 pounds.
That's pretty awesome.
And this customer saved nearly 20 pounds just on his 180 bench seat. Click the link in the video description or go to sportaircraftseats.com to find out more. What happened here? This you? You did that?
No, I didn't do that. I've never wrecked one.
You want to explain that one to me?
The bolt holding the flap ratchet on cut through the left rear rudder pedal, top of it rubbing, and dropped inside and locked up the rudder.
So
that's why I recommend cutting the inside of the rudder.
So as the tube goes by this bolt, it was cutting off the top, and at some point if it came
I'll
off.
grab a rudder pedal. Got a second?
Yeah,
There's a rudder pedal.
yeah,
So it fits out there. That's a new one.
yeah.
Okay, so it fits out here from the front rudder to this back rudder, and then the cable goes down the tail, so it's not straight. So when you stand on the rudder, it tries to pull the angle out of that cable. So it forces it this way. When the bolt's running through that flap handle, the holds the ratchet, it clicks right here on the top when it gets a little worn. And it starts wearing this down. You can run your finger on it and feel the dent. Cut it off. Just that much. You don't need that much.
Yeah,
Shorten it
yeah.
so that can't happen.
And then what happens is you go by that one time and the pressure pulls it in.
Yeah,
and
because
now
you're
it's stuck
standing
in
on
there.
it and that pin drops inside of there.
Now your
And
rudder's
it's
locked.
locked up. And that's why that wrecked.
I was looking, and I have a little clip of it. We'll probably show it at the rudder pedals in your plane.
Oh,
And you were pointing out to me the polished nature.
not polished, it's worn through.
But it's quite an incredible thing.
This is a beautiful day.
Oh, quit.
So
I have a wood nose. Looks
this
like
is
a
how
woodpecker.
this is how this looks for someone that's flown a little bit in a Cub. That's how the rudder pedals are supposed to look. It's so funny.
Those pedals were brand new when you bought it. How many
Probably.
How many pedals have you gone through? Are those the original pedals that were on it?
Yeah, that one. The right one's been replaced because on that one, the two little brackets underneath that hold it,
Yeah.
one of them broke going down
Yeah.
the Village airstrip. And when it broke, it drove into the sheet metal and locked up.
Yeah.
What I did is my wife is in the back seat and we're headed into the trees on the left side of the strip. So I grabbed the flaps, yanked it in the air and put it in a right slip and slipped it out the village airstrip and went around the state strip. And I told her, your rudders work, mine doesn't. Mine's locked up in the sheet metal. And so she landed it.
Oh, wow.
Okay. A little demonstration here.
Okay.
Something I've always wondered.
Here, take that in one hand. I'm going to put it under that spout right there. That's probably enough.
Nothing's coming out. Oh, you got water in there? Okay, I can see the separation. So the water is actually,
It's just
the fuel is only flowing out
right through the skin.
above where the water is.
Well, that's the only place there is fuel.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll set it back. I also got a lip in here as a secondary, but I never have anything in it. But see, look inside.
Yeah, the water is the same level as it was originally.
Sure, it doesn't go through it at all.
So-
Nor does any rust, dirt, anything else.
Let me ask you this. Would you put this in your airplane now? This, what I'm holding in my hand. Let's see. Yeah, look at that. The water, that's crazy. It's pungent. Why does it,
That's what chamois skin does.
what kind of fuel is
If-
this?
It's avgas. Or
Why is
this
it-
is car gas.
Why is it not straw or, it's
It's
just,
car gas.
why is it clear?
Car gas.
Can I drink it just to see?
You can. It's car gas.
That's so funny. Dude, that's awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to dump the rest of that in there so the water comes. Okay, now you're going to see the difference on the ground because it's water.
Yeah,
See it in there?
it's just water. That's all that's in there was water.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Now, if you dump gas and water in here, the water won't go through. The gas does. But if it's in here, I dumped it out, and you mix it with water and shake it up like you do vibrating an airplane, the water goes into solution. It gets sort of milky, and it goes right through that funnel. So it's
But it
great if
won't.
you've got
But it
this
still
sitting
will.
around.
It still won't do it there.
Hmm?
It still won't do it there, even though it's mixed in
It
in
won't
the
stop
chamois. But the chamois will.
The chamois will.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Thanks for making it to the end. If you want to support our channel, remember to subscribe, ring the bell, comment, like, share, spread the word. Thank you.